r/anti-work. Background War 9535 says, help your boss, then get fired for it. Included photo. Babifa said Spooky says, the wheels of progress waits for no one. Cultivating Gridder says, I'd be taking that kidney back the fun way. Critical Station 595 says, this case should help with worker medical leave. I see you took some medical leave. Looks like you went over on your time. Yeah, I donated a kidney to you. If this isn't an open and shut case in favor of that woman getting her job back, or the boss admitting fault in his decision, on moral grounds alone, then this judicial system will remain broken for poor people. Writer's Life says, what kind of sickening world have we reached? Is this how an act of kindness is rewarded? Absolutely shameful. Associator Jaded 3931 says, capitalism at work. Winter at 5388 says, time to repo that kidney back. Cool Bobby 1978 says, well, that'll teach her. I hope she learned her lesson and won't donate another kidney to a boss. Troubleshoot says, this is a total metaphor for this stage of capitalism and simping for it. Beautiful point 857 says, good. Her idiotic sacrifice was too late to teach her a lesson on the evil truth of capitalism, but this story will help radicalize others before they stick their heads as far up their boss's asses as she did. Earth Resident Yep says, shouldn't this be under r/Leopard Satemiface? Cardiologist N4108 says, I'm trying to run a business, not a charity. Wookmube says, easiest lawsuit ever. Kakaga says, demand it returned. Capitalgate 188 says, link to the article? All I see is a meme. r/anti-work. Mountain Molasses 769 says, a manager gets salty that I rather go back into trades instead of going back to the office. Worked in aircraft maintenance, which was 4 days a week before my current position, which is now hybrid 2-3x per week based on director discretion. We get news that in March we will go into the office 5x a week. We were discussing this among coworkers and managers, as some people don't see the value of coming into the office for 5 days, but managers like it, since they get to see people, yet they just stay in their office the whole day and not interact with anyone. I mentioned that, if we go into the office 5 days a week, I rather go back to my old position in the trades, since it was 4 days a week and I don't have to spend commuting 5 days as opposed to 4 days. A manager gets salty and says this is how it always was, and the world didn't burn down, and sooner or later all companies will go back to the normal way. A coworker mentioned how it burdens the employee more due to the cost of commuting, and the manager's tone-deaf response was that they should have more money saved up from not commuting during COVID-19, so they should be able to afford it now. Also, says that blue-collar workers don't have as much opportunity as white collars to move up. I ignored what they said, but I refused to go into the office 5 days a week and rather work 4 days a week at my old job. Also, if I need extra money I can just work overtime on the 5th day. Frick that noise, these companies need to learn how to adapt instead of clinging to old. Designer following 4 says, frick M. Immabot says, I'm guessing your idiot boss hasn't seen the 12% inflation for the last 3 years. Wombat 696D says, I would have asked how they like riding their horse into work, since they did that 4 years too and there are still plenty of horses around for them to ride in on. There are 2 constants in the world, change and death. Failure to plan for either usually ends badly. I bet going back to your trade job will also feel more like honest work compared to white collar work. Mountain Molasses 769 says, exactly. Also back in my trade job, once I finish work I can sit around and just be on my iPad or phone and no one bothers me. In my current job, I have to pretend to be busy or they would assign me more work. Asked says, the world is filled with people who ended up out of a job in companies that ended up bankrupt because they insisted things don't change. And if you think that's not true, look it up on your BlackBerry while you're sat outside a Howard Johnson in your Plymouth. Important Doubt 6434 says, make more money in trades than software, frick em. That'll be $200 to show up a shat. Italian Gumby says, anyone who talks shit about blue collar workers will never be someone I work under. Blue collar workers built that office he sits in. Ziggy029 says, if you have the aptitude, desire and physical ability, the trades are where it is at anyway, especially with a good union. College degrees are dime a dozen now, and for some occupations, they are critical and lucrative. But overall, no, in the trades you make a good living, a pretty secure living, and you don't have $100K of student loan debt. Not everyone wants to move up and be management. r/antiwork. Carmen Bleach Enjoyer says, just informed that my semi-WFH job is now going to be 100% in office. With a week's notice. I started up an office job around 2 years ago. Honestly, I never had any real complaints. Boring and I wish the pay was a bit higher, but it has good benefits and a friendly environment. During COVID, they adopted a semi-WFH policy, where our department members would WFH every other day to reduce germ spread. That was a condition of why I applied to the position in the first place. 7/8 of us follow this policy. The 8th was WFH 100% of the time, because he had a weird situation. Long story. Yesterday, he randomly quit. It wasn't super shocking that he left, but none of us expected to happen at that moment. We wondered why. Well, cut to 4:55 PM today. Our boss's boss sends out an email stating that, in 1 week, we must be in office every day. All of us remaining 7 workers were hired on under the impression that we would be partial WFH at this position. I should also mention that our work is directly dependent on work from other departments. What that means is, when those departments have a slow season, we often will sit around doing nothing. We used to be able to do more work on office days for better productivity spacing, but now most of our days will be sitting around on our phones or looking busy. I'm not sure if it makes me spoiled or lazy, but it honestly does make me bitter. The WFH policy was the explicit reason for why at least 4 of us joined on. And this boss's boss, to be clear, is one that we almost never interact with and is not our direct supervisor. It's just really disappointing. While I didn't want to stay with the company forever, I had no intentions of leaving anytime soon, but now I'm unsure what I want to do. And of course, how cowardly to send that email out on 4:55 on a Friday before the weekend. Class. Naughty or Bro 10 says, welp, take all your PTO and happy hunting. Top Reputation says, companies having rough times and hoping the lot of you quit so he doesn't have to pay unemployment. Lojo says, he would have to pay unemployment still though, as he has now changed the duties and responsibilities of the position, effectively changing the contract. Not sure where op is, but everyone who quits could claim unemployment benefits if their local laws allow it. Interstellar says, he's hoping people don't know that. Dresmith21 says, convincing 7 people to raise a stink and stick to the old schedule is a lot easier than convincing 70 or 700 people to do the same. Especially since 12.5% of the department has recently quit. 777 Jobs says, if it's just the 7 of you in the office, unionize. Once you inform them you intend to unionize, you get some legal protections. Make WFH the primary negotiating point once you form one. Slipstream0 says, "This is the way." Shrieking Muppet says, "I would start looking for a new job, meanwhile tell them you were hired under the expectation this was a WFH position, and therefore will continue that way until terminated. Then file for unemployment, also start talking about forming a union, and try to get the other WFH gang to join this bandwagon." Holias the Lord says, "It needs to become the norm to renegotiate salary after employers decide to renegotiate employment terms." Thapasti White says, "The 7 of you unionize, and then collectively bargain for 100% WFH. You don't even have to pay union dues if you don't want to. You are the union. It is whatever you decide to make of it." r/antiwork. Avoid off hikes 27 says, "Back in the office protocols are beyond dumb. The flex hybrid models of in-office/remotes don't take any consideration of the fact COVID is spiking right now, and it's also flu season. I know at least 10 to 20 people with COVID or the flu right now beyond several people at my office who are not feeling well. The fact I'm required to be at the office just because the managerial class and commercial real estate industry say so is beyond infuriating." Solid Inside 1439 says, "I feel this. I sit in a cubicle under fluorescent lights that give me a headache every day while I watch managers work from home on a whim. Remember, you might not get to work from home, but management gets to do whatever hypocritical thing they want." Macatak00 says, "The worst is when you're in the cubicle on a Teams meeting and seeing the manager at home saying, 'Hey, who's having a great day?' I am. Excuse my dog barking in the background in the sunlight shining in through my window." Vespertine Glow says, "Agreed 100%. Lawsuits should be flying everywhere against companies that deliberately expose their workers to communicable diseases. People can die, and have, for being forced to come into the office, where they then get exposed to COVID. This is just one more example of how property rights are superior to human rights under the law. And it's one more piece of evidence that must inform any attempt to overthrow this anti-human economic system." Macatak00 says, "Our RTO rules are beyond dumb. All meetings are still on Teams. You can't talk to your coworkers unless it's in the break room/cafeteria. You must use Teams to IM a coworker for help, even though they are right there. No phones or smartwatches allowed. And you can't even have anything on your desk to personalize your space. And to boot, I caught COVID a few weeks into my return. Thankfully I got a permanent WFH accommodation 4 months into the RTO, but I always hear in team meetings how they are essentially making the people in office act like robots when they are there." At Confident 6591 says, "My family all ended up in the air with strep that was brought home from the office. What a way to kick off a forced return to the office." Key Half 9426 says, "I commute 45 to 60 minutes each way to sit at a desk, take all meetings on Teams calls, and then drive home. I'm keeping an eye out for a change." That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.